sort of a variation of micro-credentials, but you don't get a badge for this. Speakers will be given a warning when they have 1 minute left, which will be 7 minutes exactly, and I will be keeping time. And all of you feel free to shout them down, boo them, etc. if they go beyond 7 minutes. And we will begin with Kyle Albert, who is an associate research professor at George Washington University.
All right, starting my timer. All right. Oh, is it? I'm gonna stand back a little bit. So I'm Kyle Albert, again, Associate Research Professor. I lead co-direct our program on skills, credentials, and workforce policy at George Washington University. And I'm here to present a paper that, in all honesty, we thought would be complete by today. We're still getting feedback, so we are going to put it on our website, though, probably within a month and start to distribute it. So we'll definitely look forward to sharing it with everyone. So consider today's talk a preview. We'll go into the first slide. Starting off with this observation, there are a lot of different quality frameworks out there, a lot of different ideas about how do we measure the quality of non-degree credentials, but not, but yet it's been hard to operationalize. It's been hard to put these ideas into practice. Some people obviously have ideas about, should we be looking at the labor market outcomes? Is it just about how do people earn more? Some cases, some would argue that we should be looking at measuring the skill development. Some would argue that there are other broader societal outcomes. So that's really, that's our starting point. Continuing. Can't see, I'm looking at my slides of the mirror here. Next one. Oh yeah, so our research. So there's really three parts of our research study. One was a global literature scan, a global literature review about trying to understand all the different ideas about quality frameworks that have been developed for non-degree credentials around the world. Yes, thank you. Understanding, we did case studies from Canada, Australia, Ireland, the ENQA, a pan-European organization, understanding what are they looking for in these quality frameworks. We also looked at some of the work being done by national nonprofits in the United States and the credential value frameworks that have been developed by many state governments. And then we also did a survey of higher education institutions to understand, are their data systems up to the task of measuring the necessary data, especially on those non-credit programs that we need to make determinations about quality. Continuing. This is just an extremely high, 7-minute talk level. What we found looking at the international frameworks is they often reflected the tools that international governments or governmental organizations or regulatory organizations had available to really affect policy levers around affecting quality. So in cases where in some cases there really was an ability to impose meaningful stick, if you could say, on institutions that would be reflected in frameworks. We found they tended to treat micro-credentials, again, we often say in the US non-degree credentials. Overseas, you hear the term micro-credentials much more often, but they're often talking about the same thing. I would argue that in the US, when we talk about non-degree, maybe we have a slightly broader definition. But what we found is that it's really they're using an extension of what they're already using to define the quality of degree programs. So we also found that smaller countries and subnational jurisdictions, they tend to be more likely to defer to individual institutions to make their own quality, to implement the quality frameworks on their own. We found, like, for example, in Ireland, where there's only 3 major universities, there was a great deal of deference given to those institutions, less so in larger countries. So continuing, US, there's been a lot of work on this in this space. If people are familiar with Rutgers, EQUOS, Educational Quality Outcome Standards, which is a project of Jobs for the Future and Burning Glass Institute. Various different organizations have put out frameworks and guidance documents. There's a lot of, and what we find is there is a lot of variation. They do tend to talk a lot about occupations and whether there's alignment with the labor market demand for occupations. But there's a lot of ideas out there about economic and social outcomes. I mentioned EQUOS in particular. I think that's probably the furthest along in terms of being able to operationalize the framework with real world data, getting us to an actual product where people would be able to actually look up and identify assessments of quality for non-degree credentials they might be considering. I hesitate, maybe only is a strong word, but continuing here. And the individual states, they tend to focus on common elements, like whether a credential aligns with occupational demand. That's really a common theme with the state frameworks. You see that there's really, like they keep coming back to their own labor market information, their own labor market analysis. What are the hot jobs, if you will? What are the in-demand occupations? And that's really a cornerstone for a lot of that state level work. We do make the point that we do need better data. And like I think the state credential value frameworks in particular, we do argue that there's a missed opportunity to integrate data from those state longitudinal data systems. Ultimately, in the long run, I think to get really good data in the hands of learners or prospective learners, we need data from employers, feedback from learners about how they perceive quality. And the student assessment data, I think, is going to be it's going to be hard for researchers to get, but it's something that I think we ultimately need in the long run. We do need to know how we need to be able to compare between credentials on common assessments of the skills that individuals gain as a result of those programs. Continuing in the last minute that I have, we did do a survey of higher education leaders to learn about the state of data systems and student record systems, student information systems on campuses around the country. In the minute I have, I can just say that what we found is that a lot of institutions are going it alone. They might be aware of some of the work that's been done, some of the work that's been published on frameworks, but by and large, they're developing their own frameworks at the campus level for determining whether to launch a new micro-credential and how to determine that credential or that non-degree credential is at a level of quality that they're willing to put their name behind. Especially true for the non-credit. We found this to be more the case for institutions thinking about launching new non-credit programs than for credit. So I think I'm 18 seconds early. So, so thank you all. Also, yeah, I also want to mention verbally that we also are very appreciative to Strata for funding some of this research that we've been doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kyle, for that presentation. And now we will move on to the folks from Tiffin University, Dan Clark and Maddie Ianantuano.
All right, good afternoon, and thank you, and thanks to Kale for really for the call for proposals that kind of provided us with this framing construct around ecosystems, right? And I think ecosystems really provided us with a powerful lens through which we could look at, some of the work we've been doing at Tiffin University to help build these supports for our adult and experiential learners. And as we all know, ecosystems are multifaceted, multi-layered, complex, and dynamic, right? It's complicated stuff. And so I think really it provides a powerful lens, again, for us to view some of the successes we've had throughout the last several years. Go ahead.
So everything we discussed today is more detailed, outlined in more detail in our white paper, which is loaded up on the app, but you can also scan the QR code from this PowerPoint if you're interested in those details. Today, we are focusing more so on the how and the lessons that were learned as a result of some of these initiatives.
Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah. All right, so first things first, getting the right people around the table is critical. The work is not for the faint of heart. It requires a lot of creativity, entrepreneurship, people with a student-centered perspective. But it's also crucial to have people that have decision-making authority. So in the case of TU, that included the registrar, the academic leadership, enrollment and admissions, and student support and advising. And obviously that can be altered to whatever that governing body looks like for you.
Go ahead. Yeah, we also created some outcome-specific teams. We thought that was a good approach. Specifically, we had the future team, which again was meant to be a visionary, a what-ifing team, completing things such as online program review, and we'll talk about SARs. And then specifically the pathways team that helped to envision and create on-ramps and off-ramps for our adult continuing and non-traditional learners. And that was also the team that addressed our CPL efforts. Go ahead. This is me. Right. So what does it come down to? Change management. Right. So when we talk about change management, we want to be patient with people and aggressive addressing barriers, right? Aggressive addressing structural barriers. Okay. We all know the higher ed, the pace of change can be glacial. The clock is ticking, particularly for small private universities such as Tiffin University. But we need to remember that our strengths of our university is our staff. And a lot of times these staff built some of these structures that frustrate us with all good intents and for all good reasons at the time. Okay. Not to put too sharp a point on it, sometimes folks' professional identities are literally tied up in some of these structures that they've built. So it's easy for us to say, oh, we got to get rid of that. You've got to understand how crucial it is for folks. You have 4 minutes.
Ecosystem is much broader than just what is required of the faculty and their jobs. And like Dan said, professional identities are often at stake here. And so from the faculty standpoint, it's important to remember that they are perceiving the university from the discipline out, which can sometimes lead to a lack of awareness to the ecosystem that's trying to be developed over time. So with that in consideration, consistent, candid communication is crucial, being transparent, letting them know, what's going on and really making them feel like they are part of the solution, the future plan that is being put in place.
So as an example, one of our things that we were able to accomplish there is we eliminated a significant number of SARs. The first word is stupid and the last word is rules. I'll let you fill in the middle name. And again, it was a provost directive, and we really wanted to really try and isolate and figure out some things that were unintended barriers to enrollment, barriers to completion. Go ahead and skip the next slide. So how do we find out these SARs in the process of removing them? Right. So kind of a what if survey. Hey, if you were the boss, if you had the boss button, what could we do? Right. And it's really important to ask the folks that know. 2 minutes. Okay. Who owned the original rule? Go ahead forward. One more. There you go. Who owned the original rule? Okay. Are we actually doing it? A lot of this stuff is on the books and we're not even doing it, right? Does the issue that it was solved still exist? Okay. Who is the rule unintentionally usually harming? Okay. And could we solve the issue differently? Go ahead.
And so it's best in this process to remember to be gentle. So like we said, a lot of professional identities are wrapped up in some of these decisions. Again, usually created with the best of intentions, but there can also be defended with logical and other types of fallacies, like the best practice, this is the way it's always been done. And despite the name SAR and what that implies, it's still important to be gentle and have those conversations professionally and gently in that way. Just because it's not a solution now doesn't mean it wasn't at one time. And a surprising amount of latitude is often given if others are convinced that their efforts are in earnest and truly in the best interest of the university's future.
You go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Several, so successes. A lot of those SARs were eliminated. A lot of policies were simplified, streamlined. Credit for prior learning was reinvigorated. We had a successful accreditation visit earlier this year or the end of last year. And
go ahead, flip to the results. We're running out of time real quick. So the real results, okay. and everybody's looking for enrollment, right? Double-digit increases. Last semester, completer recruitment, folks coming back to complete, trickle up graduate growth, okay? Retention rates, we can go into all of this in more detail. Go ahead and flip to the last one. Appreciate 7 minutes is really fast, okay? We will be here to share. If you want to download, it was uploaded to the conference app, but we're around if you have any questions, and thank you very much.
Thank you to Dan and Maddie. And now we'll move on to our next presentation from Dallas Kratzer, who's an instructor at Nevada State University. Dallas, take it away.
All right. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. You know, it's the day of ecosystems. So that's what I'm going to talk with you a little bit about is a different type of ecosystem. Within the credit for prior learning arena, there are many elements. And my particular area of emphasis is on military and how we can better situate our colleges and universities to engage our military community. And this is out of that work. This was done with Barbara Kent at EKU, Eastern Kentucky University, and Doug Heckman and I presented it at CCME earlier this year. Next slide, please. The ecosystem that we've developed is designed to help colleges and universities better to understand how to serve their veteran community. And we built this off of the 8 key veteran sites success model that the Department of Education put out. Next slide. Out of that, we've created this system to identify those things that veteran service centers need to be doing and how they can relate with others. Now, you'll notice that there are dotted lines to all the different bubbles. That's because the Veteran Services Office doesn't do these things, but they need to have the relationships with these individuals to best serve their community. The Veteran Service Hub is in the middle, and it's in green right now because it helps us to see how having just a center by itself meets 3 of the DOE expectations on what should be a good site. Along with that, if we can create that site with a couple of individuals in it, even better. But most universities assign this role to their certifying official. And guess what? The certifying officials have way too much to do already. So we're going to give you an idea of some other things that you might be able to do. The next step, next slide, is how we engage with communities. Our veteran service centers need to be able to engage in their communities so that they can have a collaborative process. There are many resources that can help, but we need to be sure that we connect with them. Looking at those community partners. Next slide. Moving into the industry and crosswalks, military service members come with a lot of credit for prior learning, and we need to be able to identify what that is, but they're veterans, they're out, they're in the workplace. So let's go ahead and see what credit for prior learning we might be able to pull from their workplace experience that they're having where they are now. This will meet DOE objectives 2 and 8, where we have a consistent and sustained support from campus leadership, but also it is a sustainable program throughout the lives of our veterans in our institutions of higher education. Next slide. Wow, this is fast. But you know, faculty are used to doing things fast because sometimes you just don't have enough time to present everything. But we need to make sure that not only do our faculty understand the veteran community, but our staff, our registrars, our transfer services folks. And with that, the next thing is into the recruiting area, admissions, recruitment. How do we do that? So if you could move to the next slide, please. There we go, recruitment. How do we help identify our veterans? How do we identify the needs that they have? What are the skills that are usable by our faculty that are veterans themselves, our staff members that are part of that? But you need to count the beans because that's how you know if you're truly having an impact on embracing your veteran community. Next slide. Finances and scholarship. By impacting the community, we identify the financial resources that are available to them. Help your finance folks understand how to talk with the veteran services folks. The GI Bill, the different tuition assistance things, skill bridge programs where they can do an internship while they're in school as they're coming off of active duty. Next slide. Develop systems that ensure sustainability of the overall practice is repeated twice because in the governance side, we need to write policies that are very effective and helpful in integrating service members into our world. Here's one of the challenges that we have. I'm a service member. I did 35 years in the Air Force. It was a great adventure. Loved it. But we are challenged to ask for help because we're used to helping others. And because of that, we don't take getting help well. We need people to establish policies to engage and identify service members so that we can help them because they're not going to ask for it. And one of the best things that we can do is to have a good CPL policy. And you see Kale's standards down there at the bottom. The Kale 10 standards for credit for prior learning really help lay out a way to set up a program that is engaging and effective. The DOE has identified what we need to do to help identify veteran sites that are well done. Next slide, please. Wow, I beat your 18 minutes, okay? Because I'm gonna wrap up right here. This hub, when it's done well, you will be able to serve this community in a way that other schools only hope to be able to serve your veteran community. And if you will take a moment and look at the Indiana Commission on Higher Education Collegiate Purple Star program, which is also done in Ohio, you'll see there are great opportunities to build out programs that are not only military friendly, but military ready to serve the military because they have set everything up to award credit for ACE recommendations that are applicable to their degree completion, not just elective credit. And when you do this, you serve the greater good of our communities because we as citizens respect what our military has done and we want to provide for them. Thank you very much, and I'm done.
All right. Thank you, Dallas, who is now in the lead with a little over a minute under. And I want to appreciate his input there. Thank you. And now we're going to have Jürgen von Maas, Associate Professor in Urban Studies at the New School. Thank you, Jürgen.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jürgen von Maas. I am currently the chair of Urban and Environmental Studies at the New School. I also serve as director of the Lang College Sophomore and Transfer Student Advising Initiative. And I was for many years a core faculty advisor in our bachelor's program for adult and transfer students at the New School. In this presentation, I would like to introduce to you a new approach to, well, credits for, I call it simply external learning, all right, that expands our current prior learning model and also expands it to more traditional students. In this presentation, I first go over some of the changing demographics of student populations that you're all pretty much painfully aware of, and then tell you a little bit about the prior learning program that we have at the New School, and then introduce this new 3PL project, its current status, and where we're going to hope to head with this. Next slide, please. Well, we do face, particularly, the New School is a complicated place, so I spare you an explanation. That's 7 minutes right there. But our traditional liberal arts division is experiencing declining numbers in our traditional 4-year, very structured curriculum, right? And we see increases in non-traditional students, and that also many traditional age students increasingly resemble non-traditional students in that they're increasingly part-time, face tremendous financial hardship. Many of them are getting older by the time they start college and amass considerable transfer credits from experiences in community colleges and schools before coming to the New School. We also have articulation agreements with Community College and the American Music and Drama Association, and we see an increase in veterans. Next slide, please. All right. So at the New School, up to this point, only the bachelor's program, which serves approximately 400, between 350 and 400 students, has actually done prior learning. The bachelor's program dates back to 1947, and we have, and these are just numbers from 2005 onwards, we've had 2 credit for prior learning approaches that we employed quite successfully, that about 15.7% of our students have taken advantage of. The most popular one among them, and the easiest, in fact, is credit for foreign language skills that basically 220 of those students have successfully completed, and that saved them on average $16,500 in tuition, which is more than a year of college time. We also have traditional prior learning portfolios in which students can submit, depending on pre-approval, for each competency or skill, up to 6 credits. And they do this for a flat fee. It's a 2-semester process. They do a prior learning workshop, and then in the first semester, and then implementation in the second, and that is then assessed by an external expert reviewer. And that basically for $620, they basically saved $12,700. So this program has so far been working very well. However, I don't believe we're really harnessing the full potential of it. Next slide, please. And this is where 3PL comes in, right? Because we realize that students amass considerable professional experience while they're in college. And other than like the traditional experiential learning pathways that we do have, like internships, self-directed learning, and so on, we don't really validate that type of learning that occurs, right? So the idea of parallel learning is essentially extending prior learning to also, and now also, students that are more younger students that may not necessarily be able to take advantage of prior learning because they haven't amassed a lot of experience prior to coming, and give them basically credit through portfolios in a similar fashion as we successfully do with prior learning while they are in college, right? So that's the second P. The third P would basically expand, is a culmination of this external learning, prior and parallel, in preparation for life after college, right? So think of it as a purposeful development of a career plan that they get to develop in college. Because my university, and I'm sure we're not alone, we're not very good in terms of preparing our students for life after college, right? And so this combined package of 3PL, we hope, will not only benefit adult learners, but also increasingly so traditional age students who can tap into this amazing potential that credit for prior learning and the assessment of external life experience as it pertains to academics can provide. Next and final slide, all right? So right now what we've done is we are starting a pilot program and a research project accordingly that leverages our current prior learning offerings and conceptualizes, implements, and assesses parallel learning, and also establishing preparatory learning, which we could conceivably embed in capstone experiences and other finite experiences that our students have prior to graduating, right? We also are very mindful of implementing DEI objectives into this work, all right, and aligning it with the curriculum mission of our university. All right, and so it's still at the beginning phases, but we're working on it. I think it's a good, viable idea. We will see how good it is. Thank you very much for your attention, and that's it.
Thank you, Jürgen. Dallas is still in the lead, though, I have to say. All right, now we're moving on to our next speakers with Patrick Reinartz, Gail Abe, and Michelle Chisholm, who are all from New Brunswick Community College. Please welcome them.
Hi, everyone. Just wait for our slide. Our real purpose is just to beat Dallas's time, though. That's why we're here. So my name's Michelle Chisholm, and I'm from New Brunswick Community College. This is my colleague Gail and my colleague Patrick, and we're here to talk about PLAR for everyone. One disclaimer that I would like to give you all is when we are referring to PLAR, we're talking about the assessment of informal forms of learning. So that one section under the CPL, RPL umbrella.
Next, okay. So just a little bit about New Brunswick Community College. We're on the east coast of Canada. We are also celebrating or just celebrated our 50th anniversary. We're a Crown corporation, which means we're owned by the provincial government, but we work at arm's length as our own entity. We have 6 campuses throughout our province. We welcome over 10,000 students annually, and we employ 970 faculty and staff. And we have over 90 full-time programs and many more professional and part-time learning offerings.
Great. So our vision, as MBCC, our vision is to offer PLAR services to anyone. It's exactly how it sounds. PLAR for Everyone represents an expansion of our services to fit more learners than ever. Next slide, please. Okay, so we want to give you the context for what our current RPL system is like at NBCC. And one of the things that brought on this particular project is that we noticed that our current systems have a lot of barriers already in existence for learners who want to take advantage of it. So I'm going to walk you through what we like to call Trevor's journey. And Trevor is our hypothetical student. So if Trevor came to NBCC today, and he is someone that would be a good candidate for PLAR, the first barrier that Trevor is going to experience is that he has to apply, be accepted, be enrolled, and pay for one of our full-time programs. That's the first barrier. Second of all, Trevor can only apply for PLAR credit while he is enrolled in that particular course. So Trevor is sitting in that course waiting for his results from his PLAR assessment until he hears back from our RPL office. Additionally, we have limited assessment options, as in we only offer portfolios as our option for assessment. Additionally, if Trevor wants to apply for more than one course, he has to submit a portfolio for every single course that he wishes to apply for. And then in the end, let's say Trevor is successful, there is no real benefit in terms of time or in money. So those are Trevor's current barriers at NBCC.
Next slide, please. Oh, no, that's it. Oh, you got it. Awesome. So keeping in mind those barriers that Michelle just described, our team was brought in to have the freedom to sort of dream what would an extension of this service actually look like in order to make it available to as many people as possible. So our first pillar is accessibility, of course. We want to make this opportunity available to virtually anyone, regardless of their enrollment status, their age, or their, where they are in their life. So to support those diverse learners, we need to emphasize transparency by providing detailed self-assessment tools, guidance, and a skills-based transcript that's easy to understand. On the assessment side, the project will focus on evaluations that are authentic to how these competencies will be applied in the workplace and provide more variety and choice for learners. And of course, we want to support the sustainability of this program so that New Brunswickers can continue to benefit from it for years to come. Participants will pay a modest fee, which will generate revenue for the college, but it also opens up an entirely new pipeline for recruitment of individuals who might not even consider the college experience otherwise. For long-term growth, we will establish industry partnerships and also collaborate with the college's micro-credential program, which we know is another key application of PLAR. So I'm going to pass it over to Gail to tell us more about that.
All right, so our micro-credential framework is based, it aligns with these 5 fundamental characteristics that have been agreed upon by the Canadian micro-credential community. So the micro-credentials we develop are specific, they can stand alone or be stacked, they are employer or employment relevant, and they're of short duration, but it's that authentically assessed piece that really makes this make micro-credentials a perfect product offering for PLAR. And that's because the authentic assessment is developed in the upfront design of all micro-credentials, which makes the assessment available for PLAR prior to the training delivery.
So how do we make all of this work in practical terms? What we intend to build is a public-facing marketplace that will be integrated directly into the college's website. Prospective students who have an interest in prior learning assessment can use the Credential Hub, as we're calling it for now, to self-assess to self-register for assessment in specific courses or vocational skill areas. And they'll be assessed through our LMS just like any typical student. When they receive the resulting skill transcript, they can still choose to pursue other goals with that, or they can apply that new recognized learning towards a full-time program application. Those who choose the micro-credential route, of course, will have a similar option. They can either take the training via the traditional method, or they can self-register for the assessment only if they already have all of that prior learning, allowing them to claim their badge, as we say, faster and cheaper.
All right, so that's, thank you for listening to our presentation. Here's our contact information. Please reach out anytime. And Dallas, you win.
Everyone give Dallas a round of applause.
And enjoy the rest of the conference, everyone, and happy Halloween.
Thank you all. Thanks to our three presenters from New Brunswick. We do have one more presentation. So Dallas does have one more, and that is from Jen Scram, who's the Senior Strategic Policy Advisor from AARP's Public Policy Institute.
Go to the next slide already. Next slide, yeah. Meet Dorothy. Dorothy grew up in a remote rural area near Macon, North Carolina in the 1950s and early 1960s. She grew up with her grandparents on their small farm. And at the age of 12, she left school to help her grandparents and work on the farm. Dorothy loved school. When she was a teenager, her mother brought her to Baltimore, and Dorothy began working as a bagger in a grocery store. Dorothy loves numbers, so she made up this game. As she was bagging the groceries, she would add up the order, and if she could beat the cash register and add up the order faster, then she knew she won the game. What she really wanted to do was work at the bank. But when she went to the bank and applied, they told her she needed a high school diploma. So she went to night school so she could make it happen. But she found the classes boring. So she asked them if she could take a test and get the GED that way. And they said she could. And she took the test and she got a great score. So she got that job at the bank, and the bank saw how high her potential was. So they supported her to enter into an associate degree program at her local community college in Baltimore. And Dorothy, being the trailblazer that she is, chose for her major a very new and exciting professional area, computer science. So the years went by and Dorothy continued to build her career in IT. She raised 4 daughters as a single mom, and she instilled her love of education into her daughters. And she made many sacrifices so that they could get the education that she was never able to get. They've all gone on to not only get their bachelor's degrees, but they all have advanced degrees as well. So Dorothy's own chance at getting her college degree came in kind of a strange twist of fate. After many years, a global pandemic enabled her to work remotely, and it opened up college classes to be all online. So Dorothy, who is now living in Kentucky, applied for a Donovan Scholarship. This is a scholarship that is only eligible for people who are over 60. Dorothy applied, she got it, and after so many years, she started to make her dream of getting a college degree come true. When we think of older learners, we often think of people over 30. But when Dorothy graduated, she was over 70 years old. And I think her story affirms 3 important things. First, that older adults have, and they have a right and they deserve the chance to pursue the education that many of them, like Dorothy, were really denied when they were younger. And they're driven by this very strong intrinsic motivation to achieve their educational goals. And that's really, it catches on. I mean, she inspired her daughters, but her daughters also motivated Dorothy. And the second thing is that just as research shows that multi-generational teams at work are strong and productive, I think multi-generational classrooms are more enriching for everyone as well. Dorothy's long experience at the very beginning of the computer science profession was an enriching part of her classroom experience for all of the students with her. The third thing we can take away is that older adults many of them are still building their careers. Dorothy had coveted a promotion at work for many years, but she didn't qualify because she didn't have a bachelor's degree. But when she got her bachelor's degree, she applied and she got that job, and she thrives in it. We also know that there are things that could have helped Dorothy achieve her dream sooner. And these feature in, not coincidentally, some policy briefings that we're working with Kale to develop. The first is that credit for prior learning, because Dorothy, as we know, had lots of prior learning in her field, could have helped her get there faster. The second is that resources like the Donovan Scholarship really make a difference. And so the kinds of state-funded programs and reconnect programs that are developing really can reach so many more people than something like the Donovan Scholarship can. And finally, employer support. It's what gave Dorothy that first push into education, and the flexibility of her employer is what got her across the finish line. But it shouldn't take a global pandemic to give someone that kind of flexibility to achieve their educational goals. So I hope that just taking a few minutes to hear Dorothy's story inspires all of you as you continue to do your great work of learning more about how to build strong and effective systems for helping learners as they move along their learning pathways. But I think that hearing about Dorothy also helps us remember why we're all doing this work. She really inspires me, and I hope she inspires you too. And she can tell her story much better than I ever could. So you can hear her tell her story on the website that I have the link to there, as well as some other learners who also have really, really inspiring stories. So thank you.
Dallas, you got it. Thank you, Jen, and thank you to all of our Ed Talk presenters today. I hope everyone enjoyed this whirlwind of wisdom. Please join me again in expressing appreciation for all of our participants. As a reminder, coming up in just a few minutes is our happy hour welcome reception. That's 4 to 5, and I may be bumped back a little bit because of the change in the program. It's in Churchill rooms B, C, and D, and it's made possible with the support of Inside Track. If you're not already, please pick up your drink ticket and don't forget to stop by the Inside Track booth to pick one up. I'm headed there myself, and I hope to see you there. Thank you.